Welcome to the Game Blast Show, an Xbox Game Pass podcast playing through the backlog and searching for the best games within the service so you don't have to. I am your host, Thomas Mergel, and it is May 30th. And today's games I will be talking about will be Neoverse and Nobody Saves the World. But before we dive into that, I want to talk about some games that are coming to and from the Xbox Game Pass service. Games leaving very soon, as in within hours of you hearing this, will be Yes, Your Grace, Super Hot Mind Control Delete, Spellforce 3, Farming Sim 19, and Resident Evil 7. These games will be gone from the service on June 1st. Matchpoint Tennis Championship will be available to play on June 7th, so you tennis fans out there, keep your eyes peeled and get the download button ready, because that game is coming faster than you think. Games that got recently put on the Game Pass service were Vampire Survivors, Farming Sim 22, Floppy Nights, Hard Space Shipbreaker, Sniper Elite 5, Cricket 22, and Pac-Man Museum Plus. The only game I've played so far is Pac-Man Museum Plus because I just really wanted to feel some nostalgia. Plus, it was a simple download, it's less than 2 gigabytes, and you get to play pretty much every single Pac-Man game that's ever been released. And so far, I suck at Pac-Man, I'm terrible at it, but I'm having a lot of fun with it, so it's nice to go back and revisit every single Pac-Man game that ever existed. I'm playing games that I never even played before, like there's side-scrolling missions and adventures and stuff. Didn't know that existed, so let's move on to my reflections on a couple of these games. We're going to start with Nobody Saves the World. So here we are again with another fantastic action-adventure RPG. You wake up in a shed with no clue who you are or what to do. You discover a wand that grants you transformation powers, and you must find the wizard Nostradamus and the gem shards so you can stop Calamity from taking over the world. This one has a classic top-down look to it, but loaded with all kinds of goodies from all over the action RPG genre. Sure, initially you may get the feeling that this is inspired from Zelda, but it's literally only the camera angle, and that feeling goes away pretty quickly. You can't compare every single top-down or isometric game to The Legend of Zelda, I know, but initially you're like, oh, it's a Zelda clone, but no. Within 5 or 10 minutes, you realize it's an entirely different monster. Fans of The Binding of Isaac will love the gross and overly animated beings and creatures throughout the land. The landscape itself is very creative and very much alive. The monsters are wicked and get more ludicrous as you level up and conquer more dungeons. The dungeons themselves turn into Diablo-esque mazes with hordes of monsters trying to swarm and kill you, and you have to have crazy strategic methods and skills to get through some of these dungeons. It's honestly a lot of fun. The gameplay itself is meant to attract newer casual gamers while also appealing to those who have been playing games similar to this for decades. The amount of quests that open up are wild. You are constantly busy with quests, and the map tells you exactly what to do and where to go. You won't get lost, but it also won't hold your hand. There's plenty of times where I kept getting sidetracked, and I spent many hours trying to just grind and level up things, and I simply didn't have to. I could have just paid attention to my map and continued on from there, but it is what it is. You do have to figure out the land and use your forms or your transformations to navigate and fight specific monsters in the outer world or in dungeons. The forms and transformations itself is a neat mechanic. You're kind of like a naked bald kid that finds a magic wand, and this wand allows you to turn into these powerful forms. Well, the more you level up these forms, the more forms you unlock. It's pretty neat. There's a specific skill tree, and once you get to a specific rank for a couple of these transformations, you start unlocking more things. And some of them have strengths and weaknesses, while the other ones, it's kind of like puzzle pieces for whichever situation you're in, whether it's the monsters you're fighting or the dungeons that you're going into. You can customize a form with other form skills to really create a hybrid skilled hero, and that in itself is pretty cool. And they kind of promote that too within the whole leveling of the transformations. That way you're not just stuck with the same boring build for the entire game. Again, each form has its strengths and weaknesses, and it's your job to navigate and figure out which one is best for your current situation. Speaking of weaknesses, enemies have wards, and you have to figure out which ward they are using, whether it's physical or magical or light or dark or something like that. And you have to, whichever ward they have, they're completely immune to damage with that skill. So you have to change your skills and whatever your attacks are to be able to actually hurt them. And if a baddie has a blunt attack ward, you must hit them with a blunt attack. Or if they have a sharp ward, you must hit them with a sharp attack. You know, it's something like that. Anything else, they'll just mitigate, take 0 damage. This adds a depth to the fighting that I was not familiar with. Once you get halfway through, the enemies start having several wards, and you really have to know what you're doing. And it makes strategy within certain dungeons really, really difficult. And you have to adapt, or else you're going to fail. If you don't have the skill, or if you don't have the level or the skills yet to fight off these enemies, you must get XP, right? Well, killing enemies itself does not give you XP. Completing quests, conquering dungeons, that's the way to get XP. Also, leveling up your transformations will grant you XP as well. You also have 2 different XP bars. One XP bar is for your current form, and the other XP bar is for your overall level. Pay attention to your quest log to gain XP at a faster rate, especially when using certain forms, as you can only use specific skills to complete these specific quests. I recommend saving, and saving a lot. Death is inevitable. If you beat this game and not die a single time through your first playthrough, you are a badass. But for me, I died a lot. So I kind of feel like death is inevitable. And it's not as punishing as you would think. You don't really lose XP, you just go right back to your old save progress, or your save point. So you need to save, and save a lot. You don't lose any progress, you don't lose any items, you don't lose XP. But if you die at a boss fight, you do have to clear the dungeon completely over again, because you spawn at your last save. So, and there's no saves within the dungeons. You can save at the entrance of a dungeon, but that's it. But your XP and your progress stays the same, and it's more like a slap on the wrist rather than a punch to the stomach when it comes to dying in this game, which I am okay with. Overall, the game is incredibly fun and beautiful artwork with fun dynamics. The game's soundtrack tends to get a little repetitive at times, as the music seems to only consist of a few bangers, maybe like 4 or 5 songs tops. Beginners may soon discover that even though the game starts out easy, it doesn't stay that way for long. It's not too difficult, but you have to keep your wits about you. Later in the game, I was getting further and further, and I noticed some things started getting repetitive. It kind of was turning into a rinse and repeat situation. Apparently, it's better to slowly level up transformations to gain more stars for dungeon access. And as it took me 3 or 4 hours just to level up my other forms, just so I can access the Dragon Ruler's Alcazar. If I would have known that at the beginning of the game, I would have saved myself several hours and just started leveling up these different transformations to get stars. Because you need these star points to open up these dungeons. And, whew, it did tack on an extra 3 or 4 hours to my game, which is fine. I still had fun, but it started turning into a grind. And that grind was the worst part of the game. Other than that, the characters and the land, the dungeons, the story, the writing, the setting, everything. I wasn't expecting to enjoy this game as much as I did, but it was a treat. And I honestly thought that this was a really, really great action RPG. My total playtime was about 25 hours, and I feel like I had a couple of things left to do, but with 25 hours played, and I beat the game, I felt fulfilled. I really liked the story, I really liked the twists, and I really liked the outcome. I was happy with this playthrough. I'm gonna give Nobody Saves the World an 8 out of 10. Now I want to talk about Neoverse. I put about 6 hours into this game. Neoverse is a deck-building action fighting game that is just like a 3D Magic the Gathering, but set in a universe where scantily clad women kick ass and defeat monsters and stuff. And honestly, I didn't think this game was going to hold my attention for more than 30 minutes after the initial starting play. The learning curve is a little steep, as you can upgrade and buy things during your playthrough, and The tutorials were awful. I didn't know what I was doing for the first 2 or 3 playthroughs. But you can get items, level up your skill tree, and earn prizes for missions while completing levels to help you succeed. I didn't know this was a possibility. Like I said, I think I was like my 3rd or 4th attempt in, and I realized that, oh wow, I can do these upgrades, and I better, because at first I was just skipping. I was losing out on cards and everything, so my initial runs were complete garbage. The more I played this game, however, the more it did grab me. More from a curiosity standpoint though, as I wanted to see which character and class had the best chance for survival playing through the initial journey mode playthrough. The bosses are randomized, so one attempt can be a breeze, while the next one can be completely ridiculously hard and impossible to complete. Each character has 3 classes of cards, which you can figure out and which one you prefer more for your playstyle as you unlock more and customize your deck. I preferred the Helena defensive deck, as that one was more user-friendly and easier to manage, and I would also recommend Claire's hybrid deck, as it also had some of the best cards for survival and attacking, especially with the vampire cards where you can leech health. That was a very smart couple cards to pick up, because leeching health and getting armor is your key to survival. I didn't get any crazy big attacks. Maybe like there was a couple times where I did pull a couple of cards where I was able to like smack somebody for 20 to 24 damage. That's pretty fun, but most of it is like 2, 3, 4, 5 damage per attack. And some of the bosses get up to like 200 HP. And I know there's other play modes, and I only played the basic journey play mode, but the game is meh. I did play each character in class once for a total of like 9 attempts, which took me about 6 hours to do. And honestly, I'm already done with the game. I have seen all I care to see, and I will be uninstalling the game. Actually, it's already uninstalled at this point. It's not holding my attention as much as I'd hoped, even after learning the game a lot better and figuring things out for myself. The game feels like a grind, and the fun factor was meh at best. It's a solid game for wasting, if you have 30 minutes and this game is already uploaded and ready to go, you can just play it if you like card building game or card deck building games and card games. This game is okay. After playing some other games though, apparently like games like Slay the Spire is something I really need to try if I somewhat liked this one. But the only thing I can think of that I've played deck building wise was Magic the Gathering from like 2013 or whatever it was. And of course, Hearthstone. And Hearthstone being like AAA top of the class when it comes to deck building card games. But I don't need to invest any more time into this one. Neoverse just isn't for me. If you are into deck building games, I would give it a try. Go ahead and give it a shot. But compared to Magic the Gathering and Hearthstone, it's severely lacking in the gameplay and overall depth department. While it has its moments and some of the action is okay at best, it's an average deck building game at the core. I give it a 5 out of 10. And that's it. For this episode of the Game Blast Show, shoot your emails over to murginator1@gmail.com. Follow me on Twitter @murginator, and you can officially follow the show @Game Blast Show over on Twitter. Thank you very much. Be kind to each other, and good luck trying to get through that Game Pass backlog.